Imagine relying on a dozen different software programs to run your business, none of which are connected, and each one more expensive and more complicated than the last. It can be pretty stressful. Now, imagine Odoo. Odoo has all the programs you'll ever need, and they're all connected on one platform. Doesn't Odoo sound amazing? Let Odoo harmonize your business with simple, efficient software that can handle everything for a fraction of the price. Sign up today at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
As dawn broke over the seven seas, the pirates of the Crimson Galleon set sail for adventure. But there was one problem: paperwork. Mountains of it. Filing, invoices, you name it.
This work ain't fit for a pirate.
Luckily, their captain had an idea. She used the smart buying tools on Amazon Business so they could work more efficiently and get back to doing what they do best. I know, right? Amazon Business, your partner for smart business buying.
Welcome to 31 Days of Terror, day number 20. And I have two spooky stories for you today, and the last story comes from September the 12th, 2024. And story number 1 comes from Jackie. I've written before about the ongoing interactions with my late husband. I have quite a few more of those to send in, but this is about some weird happenings last year towards the end of June 2023. This weekend, my daughter, who lives with me, was going to a wedding reception on the Saturday evening. She has 2 dogs and they had gone to her friend's kennels for the weekend. Her fairly new boyfriend was going to take her to the reception and pick her up afterwards. I planned to put my headphones in and listen to a good book and get some cleaning done while the house was empty. I was doing great, except that I kept having these thoughts about a friend of my brother's who had a motorbike accident and ended up in a wheelchair. He was paralysed from the waist down. This person kept coming to mind, and it was stopping me from concentrating, so I had to keep rewinding my book. I didn't even know this person well. I only knew he was a good friend of my brother's, and this is going back at least 50 years. I began to wonder if something had happened to him. At this time, my brother's youngest son, my nephew, had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and so I wasn't going to call my brother and ask about his friend, as he had enough to deal with without me calling him. My daughter came back after the reception. The next day, she said she was going out and would be back on Monday morning. She was 28 at the time, so not a kid. I continued to have these thoughts about this guy on the Sunday. My daughter came back Monday morning and we were chatting about the weekend. She had stayed in this lovely spa hotel on the Sunday night and was telling me about how nice it was. As we were talking, I asked what the new boyfriend did for a living. At this point, I only knew his name. She told me that he was semi-retired. I replied, "Oh dear God, please do not tell me that he's in his 50s. And she laughed and said, "No, he's only 32, but he had a motorbike accident and now he's in a wheelchair." I froze, but I never said anything to her about my thoughts over the weekend. As the day went on, I decided this could just be a coincidence. So I looked upwards and said, "If this is not a coincidence, you need to give me something so that I will know without a doubt that this is real." On the Thursday, I had a busy day ahead. I was taking friends to the airport and then picking up a lady who is a friend of a friend to take her to the airport. She likes me to take her as she hates taxis. This means between trips I could go home and have a quick sandwich. So I did the first pickup and was walking up the steps to my house when my lips moved and the name Billy came out of my mouth. I had no intention to speak, and it didn't come from me. I was intrigued, as obviously this was weird. I tried to think of someone called Billy, but I was clueless. The best I could come up with was Michael Jackson's song Billie Jean. As I was rushing, I had to put it to the back of my mind. I went to pick up the lady to take her to the airport. She's a nice lady, and we usually talk about books and book recommendations. I don't know much about her, but she has a big house, so it takes a while to get it ready for leaving it closed up for the summer. I asked her if she managed to get it all done. She replied, "Yes. Billy came in to help me with the bathrooms. Never has she ever mentioned anyone called Billy. I didn't say anything as I didn't want her to think I'm crazy. But I did think, thanks, I'll take that as a sign. The next thing that happened was in July. I went to England to stay with my daughter's family. Whilst I was there, I went to stay with my brother, whose son is terminally ill, for a week. My daughter was going to come and pick me up on the Sunday morning. I woke up and suddenly I heard the wedding march being played. It was so loud. It was like I was actually in the church. I went through to make my coffee and I said to my brother, "Someone's getting married. I've just heard the wedding march." He said, "Who's getting married?" I said, "I have no idea, but it's soon." We talked about the possibilities but came up blank. This was the 29th of July and my sick nephew's birthday. When my daughter picked me up, she asked how her cousin was doing. I said, obviously he's not doing great, but he's gone out with friends as it's his birthday today. She replied, "Oh, it's Jane's birthday today," her cousin from her late father's side who we never see. "She's getting married today." Well, that was a surprise. The next happening was when I was back home and chatting with my sister on the phone, mainly about our nephew and our brother who was struggling with it all. As we rang off, I had a picture of a cemetery flash into my mind. I immediately called her back and told her. My sister is actually a medium. She asked me to tell her what I saw, and I said it was 4 graves, 2 in front with 2 behind. It was really colourful and very vivid. We obviously connected this to my nephew's illness, but I said, whatever this means, it's going to happen soon. I just knew this, but don't know how I knew it. My nephew's prognosis was that he had another 3 months, so we thought maybe that wasn't going to be the case. However, the next morning I got a text from my sister. She gets the bus early to work in the morning. On that morning, when she arrived at the bus stop, there was a headstone with a beer bottle on top placed inside the bus shelter. She said, "I think that it was connected to what you saw yesterday. How disrespectful to do such a thing." She was upset and found out that the headstone came from another village. That was the last of the main strange events that happened last summer. Although the previous winter in December and January I kept getting the thought that someone was going to be diagnosed with terminal cancer. Not a nice thought. But I didn't feel it was my immediate family, as in my daughter, my son-in-law or my grandchildren, but somebody in the UK. So when my brother told me about my nephew, it was a shock, but also confirmation of what I had picked up. There's so much going on here, and I honestly think it's pretty amazing. Your brain, your psyche, your energy, I don't know, whatever you'd like to call it, is obviously picking up on these things. So, you know, your daughter is seeing this new fella who's in a wheelchair. You're obviously not aware of it, right? And your brain is picking up on this, but is likening it to a situation that happened many years ago, 50 years ago. So in order to communicate this information with you, your psyche, your psychic ability, your energy, whatever you want to call it, is contextualizing it in a way that you have previously experienced and understood, right? That's incredible. Just randomly walking along and the word Billy comes out of your mouth and you're like, that's really random. I don't know a Billy. That's so strange. And then the connection is this acquaintance who this person called Billy has come to help her with the bathrooms. Like, really strange and random. I love it. And it's nice that these things happen when you've specifically asked for a sign. You're like, okay, I recognize that this is a strange coincidence, that I've been thinking about this man in a wheelchair and then it's kind of come into my life. I would like a sign that that is what this really was. And then you get it. If you are ever somebody who sees me out and about and I'm talking to myself, I'm not having a psychic incident, and nor do I realise that I'm talking to myself. Unfortunately, I do it without realising. I was walking into Dunelm, which is a sort of homeware shop, yesterday, and didn't realise that I was talking to myself out loud in broken Irish. I'm trying to make a conscious effort of thinking and speaking more in Irish, right? And had my headphones on and I was listening to music, and I realised that I was actually speaking out loud and not in my brain, which not great. If you want to just assume that I'm having a psychic incident, please do. And also, how lovely to hear the wedding march and be like, somebody's getting married, and then it turns out that they are. It's beautiful. What I also really enjoyed about this story was the fact that your family seemed to be so on board with this. that they are respectful, that they listen, that they believe you, that they try and engage with the situation to figure out what it is that you might have seen and what it might be linked to. I'd imagine that feels really important.
The AI upscaling on the new Samsung Neo QLED and OLED TVs brings old content like from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond into the future.
So no matter how far back your shows are from, it'll look groovy, baby. It instantly soups up whatever you're watching to super high quality, you dig?
And no matter how fast your sports are booking it, it won't look bogus with lag or blur. We're talking popping color and contrast on a glare-free OLED, so your OG content looks fly, day or night. And these processors on the Neo QLED 8K are awesome sauce. They upscale every detail you're watching to look super sweet.
Bro, are you pumped to see what happens when all your content
gets brought into the future? Uh-oh, maybe that's too far into the future. Yeah, that's better. Welcome to a new era of Samsung AI TV. Discover more at Samsung.com. Upscale every moment. Upscaling utilizes AI-based algorithms. Viewing experience may vary according to types of content and format.
Hey, true crime fans. Tired of ads interrupting your gripping investigations? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. After all, ads shouldn't be the scariest thing about true crime. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free true crime. That's amazon.com/ad-free true crime to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Bombas makes the most comfortable socks, underwear, and T-shirts.
Warning, Bombas are so absurdly comfortable you may throw out all your other clothes.
Sorry, do we legally have to say that?
No, this is just how I talk, and I really love my Bombas.
They do feel that good. And they do good, too. One item purchased equals one item donated.
To feel good and do good, go to bombas.com/ACAST and use code ACAST for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/ACAST and use code ACAST at checkout.
I'm Noam Weissman from Unpacking Israeli History, the chart-topping podcast that dives into some of the most interesting and sometimes controversial events in the country's history. Unpacking Israeli History promises to tackle these issues head-on. So if you're wondering about things like, is Zionism a colonialist project? Is Israel an apartheid state? Then tune into Unpacking Israeli History, where we give you some ways for how to think about issues instead of being told what to think. You can listen to Unpacking Israeli History wherever you get your podcast. You can even check it out on YouTube and watch it there.
And story number 2 comes from Hayden. I've always had incredibly vivid dreams, to the point where, as a 5-year-old, I dreamt about Peter Pan being in my garden, and I sat at my window for hours after I woke up. My nightmares are no different. When I was around 18 or 19, I dreamt that I was a father. I had 2 young children in this dream. One was around 2 or 3, and the other was around 7. It was a boy and a girl, the boy being the younger of the 2. I had taken them to a soft play. I was keeping an eye on them when alarms started blaring and shutters began closing around every entrance and exit. I darted for the kids and hurried out of the building with them. I had the boy on my hip and had the girl by her hand. When I caught a fire exit door before it could lock down, it led us out to a car park which was full of abandoned cars, like something from The Walking Dead. I picked a car and opened the door. I put the kids inside and shut it. The window was wound down by halfway. They looked so scared. Without even thinking, I looked at the children and said, "I will find you when I wake up." I woke up and could feel tears going down my face. I had heard about people making dream characters aware that they knew it was a dream and getting weird reactions. I had never tried it and didn't really think anything would actually happen. If anything, I thought the dream people would just ignore it. One night I was dreaming about a house that was full of very conventionally attractive people, blondes with blue eyes and brilliant fashion. While standing around these people, it occurred to me that this had to be a dream, because I couldn't rationalise anything about it. I remembered the stories I had been reading and turned to a guy next to me. I nudged him and said, "I know this is a dream." He got scared. The look on his face was existential fear. I'm not good at reading faces at all, but the terror on his face was unmistakable. Before I could say anything, a path was cleared in the group of people. At the end was a woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. She stormed towards me, and when she was only inches away from my face, her eyes turned black and began to melt. Her mouth was agape and she growled, "Get the fuck out." I woke up completely unable to move, but I felt like I could still hear her yelling at me after I was awake. Eventually I could move but couldn't get back to sleep, terrified that the dream could continue. My brother passed away in 2017. I was 15. I remember one night about a year and a half ago I was dreaming. I ended up back at my childhood home where we lived near the end of his life. As I mentioned in my previous email, my brother's room was attached to my room and it was basically just a glorified conservatory. I was sat on my bed and could hear the familiar sound of his keyboard and mouse clicking. I walked into his room and he was there, just playing his MMO, World of Warcraft specifically, on his PC like he always did. I shuffled over and he stopped playing to look over at me as I sat on his bed. I turned to look at him. "If you need to talk about anything, I'm here for you." He nodded. At this point, I knew it was a dream because I couldn't be talking to someone who was dead. I started to get a bit teary. "Jamie, do you know that you died?" He shrugged, not to dismiss me, but sort of just to show that it didn't bother him. On a different night, again, I dreamt about him. This time, he was in my room, sat on my bed. I stepped into the room and sat with him. I can't remember what we spoke about, but I remember us laughing together over whatever it was, just like we did when he was alive. I realised I was dreaming. I took a deep breath. "I miss you. A lot." He nodded. "I know." And we hugged. I don't know if any of these are paranormal or spiritual, but those are my stories. Oh, Hayden, this is really heartbreaking and I'm so sorry that you lost your brother. What a terrible thing to have to go through when you're 15 years old, you know? I mean, it's terrible at any age, but you know what I mean. And those sound like visitation dreams, you know? Like I always say, they say that when you know somebody is dead in your dream, that's a visitation dream. And look, you got to sit with him for a few minutes, and I hope that brought you some sense of peace and closure. And I hope that for people listening who have experienced similar, that it brings you peace and closure. And your first two dreams really gave me the heebie-jeebies. That thing of like, I'll come back for you and I'll find you when I wake up. Like, what does that mean? That dream you was like, I know this is happening in a dream, but also when I wake up, I'm going to find these two children. And maybe we look at dreams all wrong sometimes. Maybe in some instances, actually, you know, we talk about alternate universes and timelines and, you know, jumping from timelines and glitches in the matrix and all that jazz when we talk about ghostly experiences and obviously time slips and glitch in the matrix stories too. Maybe the same thing happens to some people when they dream. Maybe that slip in consciousness brings you elsewhere, to an alternate timeline, to an alternate universe. And your second dream sort of gave me the heebie-jeebies as well, to be honest. There's lots of stories on the internet about what happens when you tell people in a dream that you know it's a dream. If you're suddenly in a dream and you realise, oh, I'm dreaming, which is, I'm sure has happened to the majority of people listening at some point or another, maybe not a full lucid dream, but you've had a moment in your dream where you're like, oh, I'm dreaming, I just need to wake up. I've had it. It can be very disconcerting. It's a very strange feeling, right? But there are so many stories on the internet about people who do this in a dream where they're dreaming and they say, I know this is a dream. And they say to a character, you're not real. You're in my dream. You're a figment of my imagination. And weird shit happens, apparently, when you do that. Lots of reports of people whose, you know, eyes turn black and then they attack you in your dream. Lots of reports of people who completely freak out because they're like, no, I am real. I'm not in your dream. I'm real. And all of these options are truly terrifying, to be honest. Thank you so much for listening to day number 20 of 31 Days of Terror. Thank you to Jackie and Hayden for sending in your stories. Remember, the last story came from September the 12th, 2024. And if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website, reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or $2 a month, you get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
To get people excited about Boost Mobile's new nationwide 5G network, we're offering unlimited talk, text, and data for $25 a month.
Forever.
Even if you have a baby.
Even if your baby has a baby.
Even if you grow old and wrinkly and you start repeating yourself.
Even if you start repeating yourself.
Even if you're on your deathbed and you need to make one last call.
Or text.
Right, or text the long-lost son you abandoned at birth.
You'll still get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile.
Forever!
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
Forever.